To celebrate the inaugural Formula One race at the Crypto.com Miami Grand Prix, Crypto.com has created a first-of-its-kind exhibition, bringing together the best of Web3 technology and F1 racing.
This was Crypto.com's first pilot hackathon. It's only going to get bigger from here.
Every partnership, every city we call home, every award and achievement. For every new idea, there's a team of 80 million. We're still just getting started.
Karl, it's my greatest pleasure to have you on the Proof of Work podcast. I know you quite well. We've been friends, I would say more like brothers, for more than a year now. It was great to see you when you came to Dubai. I had my holiday as well. You gave me an excuse to come for a holiday when I was in Dubai, so it was great to see you in person. And I really thank you for coming along in this journey with me while I'm starting the Proof of Work podcast and being the initial list of guests for me. So really thank you.
Thank you for having me, Shiv. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure as well.
Pleasure is all mine. Now, I know you quite well, Karl, but my students and my followers, especially among my students with whom I talk a lot about you, it would be great if you can provide a quick backstory for my students and my listeners on your upbringing, who is Karl, and what path led you to Crypto.com.
Well, I think it's a long journey, Shiv, to start with. I'm Malaysian born to immigrant parents, as you can tell. So I grew up in Malaysia. Started my career as an accountant, as a chartered accountant, and very quickly realized that it was not me, not my personality, and moved on to IT consulting within Deloitte. And through Deloitte, moved to countries, started in New Zealand first, and then eventually to Australia, where I was also consulting, and then led into banking through my consulting work. And through that, got really interested in finance and how banking infrastructure worked and all of that. And of course, with the global financial crisis that occurred in 2007, 8, kind of really made me think hard about what I wanted to do and all of that. But at that same time, felt like, I could have made a difference in banking. So I joined the payments arm of National Australia Bank. And through that, learned a lot about fintech. I was an early follower of Ethereum through that because, realized that there's quite a significant benefit in Ethereum. And eventually, through my payments knowledge, joined Crypto.com back in 2021.
Yeah, that's amazing. Both of us shared such similar journeys. So I was starting my undergrad when the GFC in 2008 hit. When I started my undergrad, I was always curious about economics as to why certain countries, are not that rich, and why certain countries have got abundance of resources and have got a great standard of living. So when I started my undergrad and, concentrated on economics during my first year in 2008, and the GFC hit, it was like, why did the GFC hit when we've got all these Nobel laureates and Alan Greenspan at the time, talking so good things and assuring the economy that things are okay. So I totally hear you what you're saying. I think that for a lot of financial services professional, 2007, 2008 was a period of reflection. But in my humble opinion, it not much happened after that, as we are witnessing. Apart from, I guess, that we had the rise of Bitcoin thanks to Satoshi, and that created the whole cryptocurrency industry. So thanks a lot for sharing that journey with us, Karl. It's fair to say that you were an entrepreneurial student then, since you navigated, from chartered accountancy, moved from Malaysia to New Zealand. So were you entrepreneurial even as a primary school student as well? And what?
No, I think not so much when I was in primary. I mean, I was like any other kid. I enjoyed my leisurely time and playing. I didn't think much about making money. But in my teenage years, I did. We had little stalls during carnivals and all of that. Me and my mates. But after I left school is when I started focusing. So I ran a couple of video shops back then, and my cousin and I we started this small little business where again, showing my age here, it's a concept called laser disc, and this was way way before DVDs, VCDs, you have to have this huge LP size disc and you can watch movie on it. And so we used to kit up these little rooms in a shop lot and rent out the rooms, and people could rent the movie for the session, right? And, we made a lot of money out of, selling, again, snacks and drinks as usual as any venue that has entertainment. But during my years of in corporate, I've always thought about, doing something on my own or going out on my own. But what I realized is, that I really enjoyed actually having and working in a team. That's me personally. But then, I learned through my MBA, again, the concept called entrepreneurial thinking, right? So it doesn't mean that just because you work for an organization, you don't apply the entrepreneurial thinking. And what I mean by this is simple, Shiv. It's ability to, take on certain risks because you see a benefit, articulating your thoughts. And then again, in this case, even in crypto.com, a lot of us, especially in my role as a GM for the region, I'm, trying to pitch and build out ideas or concepts that would actually work in my region above and beyond anything else. And that's no different than an entrepreneur, trying to pitch for funding or resource and actually executing their ideas. So I think there's a whole bunch of things about entrepreneurial thinking that's sometimes missed. So number one, my view is you got to know who you are and what you like and what you don't like and what you enjoy. And then applying entrepreneurial thinking in your path, right? So if it's, self-funded and going out and choosing your own pathway, so be it. Or if you're choosing an organization to be part of, then applying those same principles to grow that business. And in my case, I've chosen the latter.
Yeah, I think, so profound and such words of wisdom from you, because I agree with you. Self-awareness is so important in anything, I guess, especially in an entrepreneurial journey, because we've got social media and Hollywood movies popularizing and, making celebrities out of entrepreneurs, but they had to really work super hard in order to reach where they are. It's more like, they're more like bamboo trees. Like, it's not an overnight success, and you wouldn't be able to sustain and persevere if you're not self-aware. So I think great words of wisdom there.
No, maybe I'll share. I was really inspired by, even our own CEO, Chris Marsalik, right? And in one of the town halls, and in conversation, and he articulated this really well. His view, and this is for something, the concept that a lot of people talk about, and they say, hey, every night your employees walk out, and you got to bring them back, and all of that. And his view is slightly different, right? His view is, he said, look, if employees are leaving to join another organization, yeah, that's sad, right? But if they're leaving to start up their own venture, then his view is if they didn't feel comfortable enough to pitch it internally and be an owner, then that is a concern, right? So I think, that whole mindset of you got to take an owner's mindset and drive growth based on an owner's mindset makes a lot of difference, because then, you act differently, you think differently, and, that's where, your passion comes from, and, to be able to drive, right? And it doesn't matter what, is a badge of honor you're wearing, right? So like you said, I think a lot of Hollywood movies, or even books or YouTube videos that kind of sensationalize this whole, I got to go and start my own business. But at the same time, if you look at some great leaders, have been those that have actually took a company from point A to point B, and it's grown exponentially because of that, right? So one of my own personal heroes is Satya Nadella, right? So when he took over Microsoft, it was already a massive business, but to transform the business and make it to what it is today, that takes a lot of skills, knowledge, capabilities that, if you don't call that an entrepreneur, then I don't know what you'd call that, right?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. You don't necessarily need to be starting and founding a startup to be an entrepreneur. And Satya Nadella is a classic poster example of how he transformed
100%.
such a bureaucratic organization, such a massive global organization, and excelled at it. And also, if I might say, unlike other entrepreneurs that may be the richest people in the world, doing it effortlessly rather than chaotic. I think you know what I'm talking about here.
And and it's like also, changing cultures and, inspiring people to a new vision, right? And that takes immense, not like charisma, but, self-belief and the drive to go and convince all those that are entrenched in a certain way of doing things. I think that's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Totally. Now, I'm interested to ask you this, and you covered a little bit about during this answer. Before entering the crypto space, you had a career in Nashville, Australia Bank, and it's an institution where we both have worked during different time periods. We both are proud alumnus of it, I guess. You did mention that during the GFC, you moved to National Australia Bank during the payments thing. But what led you to move to crypto? Like, I'm just curious as to from traditional banking to the move of crypto, if you can just enlighten us a little bit about it.
Look, I think it's a very interesting journey. So basically back in 2020 or 2019, it was a crypto winter back then. And I started thinking about, because, if you're in payments, especially, which is what I was specializing in National Australia Bank, the concept of cross-border payments, ability to make payments fast, and all of that, it's a challenging part of the business, right? So we're relying on archaic systems, some of them are very legacy, and cross-border payments, for example, take days to move, and it's expensive. So it started getting me thinking about a lot of how, not only crypto, but, blockchain technology could solve this, right? And hence why, instead of Bitcoin, I was really a big believer of Ethereum as a settlement layer for finance, right? So whilst you might have layer twos to actually do the transaction, but ultimately it becomes a settlement layer. And so I started working out, at least from a career footstep perspective, to get to join an organization that I believed in. And in Australia, I started doing a number of consulting projects, and again, bringing in my payments expertise to help some of the projects that were available in Australia. And through that, started networking and all of that, and realized the thing that I enjoyed most is the people that worked generally in the blockchain/crypto industry, very open with their knowledge, very well connected, because they believed in a common goal. And that common goal is this, worldwide adoption of cryptocurrencies, or the utilization of digital asset-based technology, right? And so it was not, whilst there might be competition between firms, generally there's a common consensus that this is going to do the world good, and therefore we're moving towards that. And I really like that. And again, maybe, the way I got into crypto.com was a chance encounter as well. So through my networking, someone, actually realized, hey, Karl, by the way, these guys needed some help in, launching in Australia and, establishing a number of things. So I joined as a consultant, and eventually, they offered me a role that I thought was, fairly decent, which is, to be the general manager of Asia Pacific region. And I took on, and the rest, they say, is history, right? I'm absolutely loving it. It's got a great culture. And, we're doing some really good things, not only in the region, but globally.
Yeah, I remember. So I've spoken a lot about Aussie rules football in India since I've come, because that is such an Australian thing. Even when I was in US for my MBA at NYU, I was introducing AFL to them a lot, because they're still exposed to rugby, but not necessarily to AFL. And I remember one of the big things that you led for Crypto.com, correct me if I'm wrong, was the sponsorship deal with the AFL. And I saw you at that time everywhere on the newspaper, and I'm like, this is great. Like, it's so good to see businesses, because in America at that time, there were a lot of sports marketing deals being done. But I was like, Australia also is very open to crypto, at least at that time it was. So it's good to see that businesses, are thinking about expanding their footprint into Australia. And I thought that with Crypto.com and you leading that strategy, it was great to see the exposure that your company was also getting, but also for the wider crypto ecosystem and people who believe in it as well.
Oh, 100%. Look, we're very proud of the AFL, or Australian Football League sponsorship. We've been good partners with them. They've been good partners for us. So besides just the, brand recognition and awareness, the main reason we sponsored as well is, again, association with a number of values that we hold dearly, Shiv. So for example, the concept of, being an everyday sport, right? So if you look at the AFL, let me come back to our ethos, right? So we want to actually, promote the ownership of cryptocurrencies across the globe, right? So, and when you take into Australia, if you're going to say, hey, guess what? We believe in this. We really feel like this is the future of finance. And therefore, you got to have ownership. You you got to have, people aware of it. And that means we can't segregate the mom and pops, the everyday people that would actually participate. So, in our mission, we're trying to make it simple and easy. The AFL is similar as well. It's not an egalitarian sport. It's like maybe like soccer everywhere else, right? And here in Australia, it's like, we wouldn't call it a blue collar or white collar, but it is supported by everybody. It's not a class based. If you look at maybe golf, it's pretty maybe, a little bit more exclusive than AFL would be. So we feel like, there's huge synergies between these both organizations that at that time, and we still continue to support, and we're great partners. It's just been absolutely an amazing journey in the last 2 years since the sponsorship started. And, I'm looking forward to the current grand final that is turning up in September this year.
Yeah. I'm kind of gonna miss it. I usually used to watch Sydney Swans game whenever they used to play in the SCG. But I'm gonna miss out on a lot of it since I've been over here. Quickly on your early journey at Crypto.com, because you started in 2021, and yes, you did amazing things when you started over there with sponsorship with AFL, and then eventually at Formula One as well. But Crypto.com has grown significantly as well. When you joined, did you expect the level of growth and adoption for their services will be so much when you joined at that time?
Oh, I'd be lying if I said yes. I think the speed of growth, again, it's a symbol of the organizational leadership, which is why, I'm still here and I'm still part of the team. It takes, absolute visionaries to drive this, right? So when we started Shiv, and again, maybe, this is not me, I'm channeling our CEO, Chris, and the rest of the leadership team, including my boss, Eric, right? If you look at 2021, the company was only started in 2016, 17. Yes. So it's relatively new in the crypto sphere, right? And you can imagine, they started this company, and then 2018, crypto winter hits, and, they kept building, right? So Crypto.com kept building, we continued launching products and services, including, today, what is to be known as the most recognized crypto-backed Visa card, right?
Absolutely.
And so when 2020, 21, when the bull market hit, Chris had a clear view, right? That, we had to, he symbolizes this as climb the ladder fast. And so we need to get our brand out there, number one. And number two, by putting our brand out there, it also means that we got to hold ourselves now to a higher standard, right? So it's one thing just advertising, that's one thing. But once you've put your brand out there, then your brand becomes recognizable. But it also becomes something that, people look into or look up to, right? It depends into how you look into it. So whether it's making sure that, we become the most licensed player, right? To hold ourselves to the highest security standards and so forth, so that when the brand's out there, it's recognizable, and then people open the lid to look into it, they go, hey, actually, there's substance behind it as well. So those are the two major things that drove us, and I think we continue to drive that. And again, we're adopting the same mentality, rather than just putting up smoke and mirrors. So we are continuing to build and invest in our product and offering so that our customers could actually benefit from those services that we provide.
Yeah, totally. Look, I'm totally with you. I remember that when the whole crypto industry was in pain because of the events that happened last year, May and November, that, it was, I think so, Crypto.com were one of the first exchanges out there that did the proof of Merkle tree, proof of reserves using Merkle tree. And that just showcases the seriousness that the executives from the top, and yourself included, within the organization takes trust seriously. And
100%.
And I remember the CEO of Crypto.com was also everywhere in CNBC and so forth. Generally, I don't see him in media that much, but during that time, I saw him. He was there in so many of these media channels, assuring that everything is all right. And I remember putting out a post at that time that centralized exchanges that are going to be unscathed during this event and ensure trust are going to come out as winners. And here we are almost a year later, and I believe Crypto.com is stronger than ever, because I see on a weekly or fortnightly basis some new licenses that you guys have gained. So it's fair to say that you are the most regulated crypto exchange in the world. And that's where my quick question comes in, because I know that you've got extensive experience engaging deeply with financial regulators, especially in Australia. How do you think the wider crypto industry can thoughtfully cooperate with regulators?
Yeah. Hey, Shiv, first things first, right? So I think regulation is here and it's coming, right? So I think there's no two ways about it. And if you look at, since day one, right? Since day one, so whether the events of FTX happened or not, since day one, we've had a very clear focus, at least in crypto.com, very clear focus, two major focus areas that we've had. Number one is we learned the lessons from, technically Mount Gox, and we said, hey, guess what? We have to have proper security and security standards. So we built the platform with security first in mind.
Yes.
So, whether it's ISO certification, NIST, NIST, in Singapore, we've got, the Singapore government certifications. So, and including recently, we managed to get, even our cloud security certifications. So, and these are independently verified security certification, right? And again, it acts as a proxy of telling our customers, guess what? From a security perspective, we take it very seriously.
Yeah.
The second part is we've always been compliance first, right? And this again leads to a number of things. So for example, when we actually launched our crypto.com Visa card, Visa has got a whole bunch of stringent standards,
Yes.
but not only that, because it's kind of like a financial instrument. So you had to hold yourself to be like a financial services organization. And that resulted in, strong compliance processes, proper policies and procedures, good business operations to demonstrate that we would act like a financial services organization. So that led to, again, going and adopting licenses where that were clear licenses. Again, back in 2017, I think we were one of the first to actually get the MFSA in Malta because that was the first region to actually have a licensing regime.
Yep.
And since then, we have held true to that ethos, right? And gone out and every market that has proper regulation, we've actually obtained it, whether it's, Singapore, now we've got our provisional license in Dubai, and eventually, we'll get our full license there. And then this is the approach that we've taken, including even in Europe, right? Individual country registrations, like, recently last week, we managed to get the, one of the most stringent registrations in Europe from the Bank of Netherlands, right? The Central Bank of Netherlands. So the reason, again, I go back to this, right? The reason we want to do this is build trust. Right? And that trust requires two things. One is your own backyard, your platforms are secure. And number two is external validations from regulators to say, hey, guess what? You guys are holding yourself to a certain degree or certain standard that is similar to, whether it's a financial services organization or one that, the regulator is regulating for, right? Now, what could others learn from this, right? So I think as an industry, we, the industry has an image problem, right? Since day one.
It does.
It has an image problem, and therefore regulation helps to actually build that capability. Once it's, a fair, transparent regulation, that's what we're getting at, right?
Yep.
And I sense that the more people work towards that, the more it'll lift all the industry's image, right? And I think that's critical to the success of not only our industry, but, in our organization's case, at least at crypto.com, we've gone and said, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to continue doing this, and we're going to continue being the most regulated exchange or service provider globally. And as each market that has a licensing regime and we are operating, or we're going to be operating locally, then we will actually obtain those licenses to operate in those markets.
Fair. Yeah, look, fair. And it's clear from how the organization and the team within the organization is working globally that it's being reflected. It's not all talk. It is being done.
Correct.
Just quickly, keen to get your take that I like what you said that jurisdictions or countries where there is clear set of regulations, you guys are going there and getting the licenses. But there are so many countries where the regulations, like the regulators do not know. They haven't put out set rules on how to regulate this industry. For example, in India, they don't have any clear set of rules. Recently, I think just a few hours ago, I was reading that the Supreme Court, the highest court of India, has just said that you need to create this correct set of rules to the government, they said, so that they can, this industry can flourish and good actors can come in. So not necessarily talking just about India, but there are so many other countries that don't have clear rules for players like Crypto.com to come in and get licenses because they haven't set the rules. How do we engage those jurisdictions and be open-minded enough? Like to give you some context, like it, but for the listeners, because I hear this a lot in India especially. BlackRock, $10 trillion asset manager. CEO Larry Fink goes on record, we're going to start a Bitcoin spot ETF. A $10 trillion asset manager means they own more assets than the gross domestic product of India and Australia combined. I'm sure that he's done and made the decision after doing thorough research, after initially contradicting with what he said, that Bitcoin is not a Ponzi asset. I mean, that just showcases that. So for a lot of jurisdictions that still believe in that old mindset, how do we engage those countries that this is what you need to do, follow the lead from, let's say, Dubai or other jurisdictions that are creating those frameworks so that businesses like yourself, who are good actors, come in and start operating for the people of that jurisdiction?
Shiv, maybe I won't go specific countries, but I think maybe in general, right? Most countries are thinking about some form of regulation, and whether those regulations are retrofitted into existing laws or separate, segregated requirements are created, very similar to Dubai that you mentioned, right? Or even in Hong Kong now, the FCC has come up with its own set of regulation for virtual asset service providers. The evolution of that, of course, is going to take time, right? It's not going to be instant because, maybe I'm sympathetic of most major governments, because especially democratic governments, where there is a focus of balancing a whole number of factors, right? So they've got a huge number of things to consider. India is a huge democracy. There's a number of factors that, parliamentarians and government have to consider before they can act on certain things. But the fact that, like you were highlighting earlier, maybe I'm not following India's regulation as closely as I should. There's been, movement towards some discussion, some dialogue. Good example here in Australia is a good example, Shiv. The Department of Treasury has kickstarted the process to actually consult with industry and to actually ascertain whether separate regulations needed or new or existing regulation has to be created, right? And I sense, the fortunate part, and I always talk about this, when you live in democracies like India is here, in Australia, or even Singapore and UK and other democratic nations, right? There is a concept of, people's voice, they get heard, and there's a process. It may take time, and maybe sometimes it looks messy, but eventually we always head towards the right path. Time and time again, the ability for democratic nations to actually move towards the right path has been proven throughout history, right? Yeah. I'm a big believer of that, and I believe that that's the path. I don't believe that, it's a blanket no, or this is never ever going to happen in my backyard kind of scenario. Yeah. But it just takes time for people to fully appreciate and understand. And maybe global events, with Dubai opening up, Singapore has got a very clear licensing regime for virtual assets under its Payment Services Act. Hong Kong now is following suit. You got the FCA following suit. Australia is coming up with something. And I sense that as these nations develop clear regimen, I reckon, there will be fast followers after that as well, right? And that's just the nature of how the global industry works. And again, maybe because, the fact that virtual asset service providers are born global. And, in fact, some of the encouragements that we've been discussing is it's better to have a regulated player than an unregulated player supporting your population. So I think it's a time factor rather than, one of ideology. That's my belief. I could be wrong, but I strongly believe on that, where, the time factor would balance different thinking and adoption of different thoughts. And again, this is part of the democratic process where, a lot of voices need to be heard, and sometimes it takes time.
Yeah, that was great. I think that was a very thoughtful response, Karl. I think, I totally understand where you're coming from. It's like the stakes are higher in a country like India. Yeah. It's a massive democracy. It's got different cultures. It's got other important issues as well outside crypto that they need to deal with as well. So I think I hear you, and I think that's a very fair and thoughtful response, and an empathetic response. Now, that brings me to the question, since you are general manager of Asia Pacific, and APAC is a very diverse region, different cultures and so forth. It includes Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Hong Kong, Indonesia, which I know that you go often there, and now you go to Dubai, we're GM of Middle East region as well. What have been your greatest lessons about managing people and driving growth, especially across these different cultures that you're navigating within the APAC region?
Hey, Shiv, my biggest weakness is I work long hours. results. I think that is something I wish I could change, but the same time is I don't feel like it's worked, so it helps. I sense, the major difference is, right, and maybe this is something we are very lucky with, in the organization I work for, right? We all share common purpose. There's this common shared goal, especially now in winter, and we talk about this among the teams quite a bit, right? And I talk about them to my teams quite a bit, is that, it's going to be a long winter. We know that, it might take a year and a half, 2 years, who knows, right? But if you keep going back, why you do this, what is your, North Star here, right? So why do you turn up to work? Then as long as that still holds true, then it doesn't matter whether the markets are up or down or moving sideways or, some token wins a court case. It doesn't really matter, because in the long run, your mission is still true. That the fact that we all believe that this is the future of finance, this is the future of the next phase of the internet kind of technology that is going to change the world. We still all believe in that. Then the movement has to be towards that passion. That's number one, right? Number two, and again, maybe it's leadership style, across the organization, we are, not top down, it's not very hierarchical, it's a sense where, you have 5 different bosses that you have to report to. There's a committee that you have to decide things on, because we're all in this together. So if your first thing, your North Star is true, that means we're all on a mission, then we're all on this together, right? So that means we're all rowing the boat together towards that, not someone instructing others to row, because then you're not really buying it. You're the boss, and you're just going to sit back and, take the fruits of others' labor, right? But if you feel that, hey, guess what? I also feel so passionate about this, then, you're going to have your sleeves rolled up and you're part of the group, right? Now, what I have found, and maybe this is throughout my career, and I've seen this shift, and I'm, really very proud of the organization I work for, and, you see me plug them in quite a bit. And it's not because I work for them, but it's because I feel I belong in a group, right? If I feel that, then it is my job to also make my team feel that, right? Sure. So, I think it's not about, how sometimes in organization, and if I'm rambling on, Shiv, it's because I feel like it's coming from my heart, right? Is that, we've been in organizations throughout our career where, there's value statements, mission statements, and we have, team days. And in the 2.5 years I've been in this organization, I've never had a team day, and my team don't talk, hey, let's have a team day. Say no one ever, right? Because every day feels like a team day, right? I am working towards a common goal, and, we're all in this together, and, we feel like we support each other. No one's talking down to each other, and each one's voices are considered, right? So I think in the second part of it, whilst the North Star is true, the second part is we don't have gimmicky stuff around. So it's just like this true sense of belonging that actually drives us. And I guess the third one is, that's just me. I use a lot of humor. I think life's too stressful. So I find that helps break down barriers and culture as well. And the ultimate thing is, if I've got this view that if I'm getting you to do something, it's not because I don't want to do it. It's something that I feel like I can do it myself. But, and my teams feel that, right? It's like, it's not just, sometimes you get leaders that just pass things down because, they just want all the glory. They don't want to do the rubbishy stuff, right? So I think those are the major 3 things that I feel like across the region in terms of leading teams, right? I just wish I had more time in the day, Shiv.
Got it.
Yeah.
I just want to say to all the listeners over here that so I know I know people within the crypto industry in New York, in Australia, in India as well now. I have to say, and I'm going on record saying that Karl is the nicest professional in the crypto industry. He's such He's such a senior executive, but he's so humble, and he's also the funniest, and he also can drink people under the table as well, which I noticed when we were in Dubai. So Karl is definitely the nicest man in the crypto industry that I know of, hands down. So that's
Shiv,
why I think
you're too kind. You're too kind. You're too kind, Shiv. Thank you.
It's true. You mentioned something about crypto.com and the team, feeling that crypto is the future of finance. And that's the thesis that, that I believe in as well. I write often about it consistently. But keen to get your take, more than a high level, if you can dig an envelope further is that how do you conceptualize the future of finance, money, most importantly, society? How does all this tree get transformed by cryptocurrencies in the future?
Shiv, look, maybe I'll break it down into a few things, right? So the world's going to change. I think we all buy that.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times the concept we hear, oh, Bitcoin's been around since 2009, it's 2023, nothing has changed. But, I'm a big believer of, really small change, and then it hits a tipping point and suddenly it becomes, wow, this is now a big thing. I give you an example, right? Like cards, credit cards,
Yes.
Visa cards, MasterCard, right? They've been around since the 50s and 60s.
Sure. 60s,
right? Yeah. And when I was growing up, hardly anyone used cards. And that was 30 to 40 years after the creation of Visa and MasterCard, after the creation of that, right? But today, you look at it in 2023, this is like now 60 to 70 years after the creation, everyone has a card. Everyone uses electronic transactions as a mean of transactions. And you see in at least major economies, the use of cash is declining significantly, right?
Sure.
Now, there is something that changed this whole process, something, right? And what is that something? Is basically, one, the banks adopting it, the reduction or the introduction of internet-based technologies to allow faster processing and all of these things that come into fruition, right? Now, there's a whole bunch of technologies that are continuously being developed, at least in the crypto or blockchain industry, that is going to lead to this. Now, it could happen in 5 years, it could happen in 10 years, maybe it'll take 40 years. Doesn't know. I don't know that answer, right?
Yeah.
But there are, clear signals that are coming through. So here's my thinking, right? So let's take finance and let's break it down a little bit, right? So let's talk about the movement of money first, right? So I believe in that. And, in the colloquial terms, we use payments as the means of movement of money.
Yes.
So today, the movement of money is all electronic. No one really moves bundles of cash. You don't see armored cars moving things around and all of that, right? So in major economies, even in like India, with your faster payments, people are already adapting to this new form of technology, right?
India's UPI is amazing. Like I'll tell you,
UPI.
It's amazing,
right?
Yeah.
So I can move money to you instantaneously, and it doesn't cost me anything. So when you're going out and you want to pay your maid after meals, like bam, the money is there, right?
Yes.
Now this leads to a behavioral change, right? Because now when you move money internationally, it is not the same speed.
Yeah,
it is not
so
the
true.
same.
Yeah.
So this behavior change is going to lead you to question, why is it taking 2 days? Where previously you didn't mind because your local payments also took a day. So you go like, hey, for international payments, it's going to take a few more days because it's cross-border. Right? Now, I really feel and I believe cross-border payments is the first area that is going to be disrupted, or if not already being disrupted, right? It takes a long time. You have intermediaries like, companies like Wise and, Remitly and all of these guys that are trying to bridge a gap because of a broken system.
Yes.
Yeah? However, if you think about the movement of, whether it's digital asset, cryptocurrencies, or stable coins, cross-border, it's amazing. It's super fast. So
Absolutely.
payment flyers, right? So if I'm paying you as a supplier, let's say, today I have to predict when the money is going to hit you to meet my payment due dates, right? So normally I will have to pay as a treasurer. I'll pay you in advance, like maybe 5-7 days, because I don't know when the banking systems are going to work, what public holidays there are in India and against Australia. And, it's a complex process, right? However, if I'm paying you with, let's say, a stable coin, right? Shiv, I don't need to plan that. I can tell you in seconds, you're going to get it, right? So I can actually schedule all of this, all right? That means my treasury management is going to improve significantly. My working capital management is going to improve significantly. And once you multiply that across all businesses in an economy, the cost savings and the actual improvement in efficiency is going to actually increase business operations, right? So that's number one. Number two, I think, and this is something maybe when I was in payments, what we were looking at is pretty much around e-commerce, right? So if you look at today, marketplace payouts, marketplaces are big. Amazon's got its own marketplace. You got Etsy, you've got all these different marketplaces that actually have a whole lot of small sellers and buyers, right?
Yeah.
However, the marketplace controls all of the distribution of funds. Again, today, when you're relying on banking system, it takes a lot of work, right? So you've got to connect with local payment systems sometimes you got to go and localize your bank accounts in different countries, or you might have intermediaries to manage this. Now, again, I come back to this whole thing about like even let's talk stable coins where people understand them, right? The payment function can be automated. And if I bought something from you on the marketplace, Shiv, it can happen instantaneously. You're getting your money instant, which then allows you to buy new stock, to sell more. It actually is an improvement of the entire marketplace, right? So that's the second part. The third for me is, again, this is simplistic finance. Again, looking at today's problems, right? If you're a major company, including like us, we are across multiple countries and all of that, right? We rely on multiple banking partners. If I can manage all my treasury using digital currencies, then I can aggregate that regardless of where they are globally, right?
Yeah.
Again, if I'm a corporate financial officer or a chief financial officer, I'll be able to see all my wealth or financial situation in an instant, rather than going into each bank account and downloading my statements and all of that. So I think those three use cases real today, right?
Yeah.
Now, of course, the further ahead we reach out into time, then the more predictive it becomes. And I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say, the area that I feel is going to transform things is, the evolution of AI-based algorithms, right? That it can actually utilize and actually transact financially with each other. Let's say you have two bots and one's managing my finances, another one's managing yours. Be able to transact each other. The most reasonable thing you would do is something through the blockchain, because it's instantly verifiable, and an automated tool will be able, or even an AI function, be able to read, scan, and ascertain value instantly, right? So that means settlements instant and all of that. So that's going to change. I was very bullish on DeFi, Shiv. I thought it would have moved further along the journey than it has, but I sense that it's one of those things that is going to take time, and the way it's going to work is potentially by increasing adoption levels, right? So if we look at today, even in crypto.com, right, I can see where we are hitting, right? So we started off 2 years ago at 10 million. We've hit 80 million. Eventually we want to hit where there's 250, 300 million people. Now, with more people participating and actually have ownership of cryptocurrencies or digital assets, they're more likely to A, learn about it, and B, then start venturing out of it, right? So it's no different than a good example, and this is slightly related but not. My mom, she's 76, but 9 years ago I bought her first mobile phone. I mean, just a smartphone. She used to have one of those small like a Nokia phone, and she carried that along because she knew how to use a telephone, right? But when I first bought her a mobile phone, and I said to her, hey, this way you can chat with me with any time through WhatsApp. So I taught her about WhatsApp, and today she exclusively uses WhatsApp, and she has learned all these new things and and expanded to sending videos and all of that. Right?
Yeah.
Now, that would not have happened if she did not get into it, right? And I feel like the more people that get into it, the more you would create an incentive for them to learn and also then adopt the new technology.
Yep, I think you're spot on. By the way, that sharing that personal journey of your mom got into WhatsApp, I think that's a great analogy on how people would start adopting DeFi. But just quick comment on what you said about DeFi. I'm in agreement with you. I was in NYU in 2020, and the professor that taught me crypto over there, Professor Ian D'Souza, he had a good network of people. And, so I was introduced to certain individuals that were developing DeFi protocol. This is like early 2020. People didn't know much about DeFi at that time. And when I noticed, when I heard about Compound Protocol at that time before their launch, I was like, shit, like this is like amazing what these guys are developing. So I'm in agreement with you that it hasn't really hit off as much as I thought by this time. But then again, I believe that I'm also guilty of majority of the people that overestimate these frontier technologies in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. And I keep on reminding myself exactly what you said about the credit card and so forth, or even artificial intelligence for that matter. Artificial intelligence has been there since the late 80s. Professor Dhar at NYU told me about it. And now after 30 years, we are experiencing the magic of AI, that suddenly people are saying that it's an overnight technological success, but people have been developing AI machine learning algorithms since the 80s. So I'm in a total agreement with you. The second quick point that I want to make, since you spoke about stablecoin, and I thought that was, again, very insightful, the discussion that you pointed out about stablecoin and the significance that it can do for the society. Crypto.com is a brand that we know people trust in crypto in the industry. How far is Crypto.com to start their own stablecoin?
Well, we don't have anything of that sort at the moment, Shiv. Not looking at it. We're very focused again. Let me come back to the mission, right? So very focused on getting regulated first and moving through the regulatory landscape. We're continuing to build products that support our customer base. So that's been the focus. And we work with the likes of Circle and Tether and so forth to support the ecosystem, but nothing in the horizon at the moment.
Got it. This question now is more for my students, because I tell you what, so in India, among the youth, I teach mostly students who are between the ages of 23 to 29, because they are MBA students. That's the general age of MBA students in India. And I've taught at 2 business schools now, and they are smart people, smart kids. They are curious, and they are very pro crypto in a way. They make an effort to educate themselves in crypto, and they don't believe in the run-of-the-mill generational thing that what you said, crypto has got an image problem. They don't necessarily believe in that. They like to give it a go and educate themselves. For budding entrepreneurs and students who are curious about crypto all over the world, but especially in developing economies, what advice do you have on how to take the first step in the industry?
Hey, maybe I'll share a story first, right? So, we look at a lot of the developed nations, and India is a bit of an exception, right? Because it's quasi-developed and still developing because of its population size, right? So you think about, certain technologies is far way advanced than most economies, most developing economies, right? But let's lay this out. So I tell this story because, my own family, left Sri Lanka during the war, and, many of them, left with, the ships on their back, and, you couldn't get your wealth out of the country, and, many of them would have, maybe left with, their jewelry, right? And they had to hide the jewelry so that it doesn't get confiscated in the borders and so forth. And to today, that general distrust, at least in my parents, right, still holds. And the reason I tell this story is because, we take it for granted, the concept of trust. Today, many of us, like you, me, Shiv, we're very fortunate. We live relatively stable lives. We work in environments that allows us to actually have trust in the system, right? But there are a lot of people globally that do not have that trust. And hence why, this is my own personal belief in crypto and the thesis of crypto, right? Because if you build a platform, and that's what we are aiming to do, a platform that is trustworthy, then holding on to crypto is trustable wealth management system. Now, if you look at students who are looking at entrepreneurial issues, right? And I feel like the challenge, especially in developing nation, is one of access, and number 2 is utility, right? So how do you actually create access to ownership, number 1? That could be identity verification, it could be, trying to make sure that, they can hold on to those assets in a secure manner. I mean, you and I would be able to use, cold storage devices, but the average mom and pop wouldn't, right? So how to build a trustworthy solution in that sense. And the third is, I still come back to my original thesis, cross-border payments, marketplace payments, and also treasury management for corporates, right? Those 3 are not fully solved for, and there are small little technological components that could actually help solve that. And if you're starting to think about it and trying to drive innovation in that space, I would start in those spaces, right? The final one for me, if you're looking into getting into the industry, right? And I see the value, at least in Australia, and I'm sure there would be in India as well, is the whole concept of, going to meetups, meeting people, and just immersing yourself with the conversation. And one of 2 things would happen. Number one, you make new friends, right?
Yeah.
And you learn nothing. And that's okay. You got new friends.
Got
But
new
I can
friends.
guarantee you, right? I can
Yeah.
guarantee you that the moment you go to this, that there is a whole, I mean, it's like a magical thing that happens in our minds, right? That just by, meeting like-minded people and sharing that knowledge would actually expand your thinking. I mean, it's a good example is, our conversations that you and I have, Shiv.
Yeah.
I've learned so much from you from the mere reason we talk.
You're so
right?
kind.
We talk, right?
Yeah, we
But
talk,
if
yeah.
we don't, and we don't, we pretend like, I know everything. I don't need to learn. I don't need to engage. Then you're going to stay where you are, right? So like I said, the worst that could happen is by going to some of these meetups or conferences, you meet people and you make friends. And that's a great thing, and the second thing is, which is almost certain to hold true, is that your brain will actually rewire itself. And next thing you know, you will find patterns out of you'll find patterns that you will not normally see, right? Give you an example, Shiv. So in 2020, right, when I first started getting into this journey, I read so much. I met so many people to talk about things that I thought was a problem. And, someone said, nah, that's rubbish. That's not a problem. Or, oh yeah, that's a problem, but it's so big, you're not going to be able to solve it, right?
Yeah.
And in that year, I would say it was my steepest learning curve. But once you hit a certain inflection point, you start seeing those patterns, right? And those patterns then allow you to then synthesize new thoughts, new areas, and you meet newer people. And now you're having different conversations with those individuals. Your knowledge base has changed, right? So can't stress enough, you just got to pull yourself into it, immerse yourself into the knowledge gathering, and also not only gathering the knowledge, but being brave enough to go out and discuss what you know. And you could be wrong, but by putting yourself out there, you're going to learn, right? So that's my advice. But in terms of entrepreneurial opportunities, man, there's so many things that is broken in many developing countries. And, you just got to look around the world, right? And I think it's an easy way to find those.
That's great. That's great advice, not only for my students, but also for somebody like me as well. I think you really are spot on. I'll just like to add, which I think you have mentioned within your advice as well, but a lot of people, and something that I struggle at times, but since being in India last year, it's something that I've overcome and still overcoming, is that being humble enough to admit when you're wrong from a cultural context, because different cultures work differently, and there are certain principles that are universal, but there are certain principles that might be right in Australia, but may not necessarily be right in another country. So it's very important to be open-minded enough to realize that in a different cultural context, you got to adjust differently as well. So that was a big learning for me that I had to overcome, or to build my network that I've built in India, which I'm quite grateful to all my friends in India as well now that I've made since last year. Lastly, Karl, what most excites you about Crypto.com and crypto broadly for the future?
I'll start with crypto broadly for the future. I go back to first principles here, right? It is the future of finance. It is going to be the future of the world. We know it. And to be part of that journey is absolutely amazing. It's like, being part of the first internet journey, or being part of the first, mobile phone journey. It's just amazing, right? That you can say, hey, guess what? I was there. Maybe I contributed something, maybe I didn't, but at least I was there, right? And when it comes to crypto.com, look, we're heading the right trajectory. We've got a good value system that, I absolutely believe in. And what excites me about it is, again, I go back to culture, right? And maybe, Shiv, you were talking about this, and again, it's very, very observant thinking that different countries have different cultures, different companies have different cultures and different belief system, right? And in this case, what excites me is that this common shared goal that we all have, right? From all of the senior leaders to, the core teams that I work with, that we are going to make a difference, and we are already on that journey of making a difference, right? So I think that really excites me. We're going to continue building on, our core pillars of compliance, to continue focusing on being highly regulated around the world, and, building on a core strong platform underpinned by strong security for our customers, right? We're excited about, some of the products we're going to be launching, but, the thing that excites me most is, I rock up every day, and, I know that everyone in the team, we are seeing seeing the same things, right? Like we're
Yeah.
heading in the same direction and we're going like, we're all in this together. I know it sounds very kumbaya-like, but
No.
I feel that that's really exciting, and that's what makes me so proud every morning, waking up, day in, day out, whether it's long hours, it doesn't feel like work because you feel like you're on a mission.
That's great. I mean, that reflects the culture that leaders like yourself and the senior C-suite within the company have created when, you feel like that within an organization.
Absolutely.
Crypto.com by no means is a small organization. I remember you telling me that you've got like a 3,000 to 4,000 workforce. So for such a big organization to have that kind of a culture, and I agree with you, like from what I've heard about Crypto.com and what I see, it's for such a huge workforce, it's still a very lean decision-making company. And that's why everybody feels empowered. This is a masterclass for leadership and company building, I guess, especially in a industry like crypto. So that's amazing. Karl, this is the end of all the questions that I had for you. But now we're going to go to a segment which is called the rapid fire segment of questions. And these are the questions that I haven't given you, but these are all very playful questions, which are yes or no, or 1 or 2 word responses. You can choose to pass, but I think it would be more playful if you answer them. So let me just bring those list of questions. Just give me a sec. Just give me a sec. How did you find the podcast so far?
Yeah, it's good. I like it. Thank you. It really got me thinking. Very good questions, Shiv. Very good questions.
Don't take too long. Rapid fire, as the name suggests. Okay. Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Bitcoin.
Mac or PC?
Mac.
Sydney or Melbourne?
Melbourne.
Melbourne. I shouldn't have even asked that. That's such an easy one, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Wine or beer?
Beer.
Work smarter or work harder?
Oh, both.
Yeah, fair. Favorite book?
The Road Less Traveled.
Okay, I haven't read that. I'll probably get that and start reading it. Why? I'm curious. Why that one? This is not rapid fire, but yeah, why?
No. Why? Because it's all about thinking and personality, and I think knowledge easy to get, but trying to shape who you are is harder.
Got it. Yeah.
And totally. I think if you focus on how to shape who you are, it's a lot more valuable.
One thing you can't live without.
Oh, my phone.
Got it.
My mobile phone, 100%.
Yeah. Quality you value most in others.
Integrity.
One superpower you choose.
Reading minds.
Reading minds. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Life purpose summarized in one word.
To bring joy and happiness to others and ease the suffering of others.
But I think that was very profound. And from what I know you, I think you followed that too hard and live like that. Yeah. Karl, this was great. I know how busy you are. You do so many things. You work at Crypto.com as general manager of Asia Pacific, Middle East, regions, and you do so many extracurricular activities as well that I know of for the community within Australia, within Indonesia. So for you to take out the time really, really means a lot to me. I've respected you all, like since I've met you, I've always respected you. You're a great ambassador for Crypto.com. I know Crypto.com have got very high-profile ambassadors who are my heroes as well. I'm a big fan of LeBron James. I know LeBron James is an ambassador for Crypto.com. I know Matt Damon is an ambassador for Crypto.com. But for me, Crypto.com ambassador is you.
Oh,
so
thank you, Shiv. You're too kind.
No,
You're too kind.
I mean it. I really mean it. So I really thank you for taking out the time to do this. I hope you enjoyed this experience.
Oh, I loved it. I absolutely enjoyed our conversation. It's been good. It's got me thinking about a whole bunch of things, and I think it's been really nice. I've known you again. I've got immense respect for you. You know that. I spent quite a bit of time with you over the years as well. And Shiv, you asked some really good questions, right? And that's really nice. And what are you doing with this podcast? Amazing again, trying to share knowledge and experience with others. I loved it today. I just looked at the time and realized, oh my God, we've been speaking so long. I didn't feel it at all, right? Yeah,
sure.
And that's what's amazing about good conversations.
Yeah, sure. Agreed. Thanks a lot again, Karl. Yeah. And look forward to having you again whenever there is a big milestone in your professional or personal journey or in Crypto.com journey.
Would love to.